Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking through my birth story. I absolutely loved watching these when I was pregnant, so I thought I'd make one of my own. Of course, everybody's labour is completely different. Mine was slightly traumatic, but I was still also really lucky. It could have gone a lot worse. I was quite lucky in how quick it was, but you'll see why it was a little traumatic as I talk through the story. But please don't let it put you off. Like, I would do it 10 times over. Even though it was a bit traumatic and I did struggle, I think it could have been a lot worse. Me and baby were really lucky in the sense that, like I say, it was really quick. There was no major concerns about my health or baby's health. So yeah, just don't let it put you off. Everyone is different, and what I went through you might not go through, so please just bear that in mind. So my due date was on a Friday, and the week before I had a midwife appointment and they asked if I would like a sweep, but because I still had a week to go, I declined this as I really wanted to just see if baby girl would make her own appearance. So I didn't really want to interfere with anything, especially because I was only 39 weeks at that point. So I declined the sweep, and then the following week I had a midwife appointment on my actual due date on the Friday, and they asked if I would like another sweep, and I had no symptoms of labour coming whatsoever. I had a few mild cramps in my tummy and back, but I'd had those for about 3 weeks, so I knew my body was kind of getting prepared, but there was no contractions, no mucus plug, no waters breaking or anything like that. So I was just thinking there is literally no sign of baby girl coming anytime soon. So on my due date I did in fact have a sweep. The midwife also mentioned that if by the following Friday, so when I was 41 weeks, there was no sign of baby girl coming, that they would want me to be induced on that day. And I personally just really didn't want to be induced at all. There's nothing wrong with being induced. I know a lot of people prefer that because they like the control of it and they know when they're going to be booked in, they know when they're gonna obviously be induced and when labour's going to start, but I really just wanted baby girl to come on her own. So my thought process was, if I had a sweep on my due date, by the following week I may not need an induction. The sweep might bring labour on and it will decrease the chance of an induction. At this point I didn't have high hopes that the sweep would work, just because for one, it's my first baby, so they do say that sweeps might not work with your first baby, and the evidence is very mixed on whether sweeps actually work. Some people can have a sweep, go into labour, and it's not actually proven whether it was the sweep that actually made them go into labour or if they would have just gone into labour anyway, whether they had the sweep or not. So I didn't get my hopes too high because I thought, yeah, I might have the sweep, but not much could happen. So when the midwife did the sweep, she said that I was only 1 centimetre dilated at this point, and that really just made me feel a bit crappy because I thought, oh my gosh, like, it's my due date, I'm gonna have to be booked in for an induction next week if she doesn't come soon, and I'm only 1 centimetre. And a lot of my friends who have had children have said that in their personal experience they took quite a long time to get from like 1 to 4 centimetres or 4 to 8 or whatever it may be. They were in labour quite a long time and it took their bodies a lot of time to be fully dilated. So I thought, wow, I'm only 1, I've got to get to 10. This is probably going to take a while. After the sweep, I didn't really have much happening. I still continued to get the cramps that I'd already been having, and I had a little bit of bleeding as well, but that is obviously normal. That is a symptom of having a sweep. That is what can happen after the sweep. So I didn't think too much of it. The following day, which was the Saturday, I had no signs of labour whatsoever. My boyfriend kept asking me, are you feeling anything? Do you feel any different? I had family members ringing me, how did your sweep go? Do you feel anything happening? And I was like, no. I was like, literally nothing. I feel no different than I did before the sweep. So I just really didn't think that the sweep had worked. I just thought it's gonna be a long ride and she's not gonna be coming for the next few days. So on the Saturday, went about our day. We were out all day, got home at around 5, and I had a really bad sleep the night before just because I was 40 weeks pregnant. I was really uncomfortable trying to get into a good position, up and down for a wee all the time. So I was absolutely exhausted at this point. So I had a nice bath, I had my tea, got into bed, and I said to my boyfriend, I really hope I sleep well tonight. I really want to get an early night. So I got into bed about 8. At 9 o'clock, I had my first contraction, and I was a bit unsure whether it was actually a contraction at first because it was all in my back. I was laying down on my side in my pregnancy pillow, and I just had this really, really intense and very, very painful kind of cramp style feeling in my lower back. And it lasted about a minute, and I didn't really say anything. I just breathed through it. I didn't say anything to my boyfriend until after it had passed. And then I was like, babe, I think I've just had a contraction, but I'm not too sure. Because it lasted a minute, I was like, when I've been doing my antenatal classes and stuff like that, they usually say it doesn't last that long straight away. It kind of builds up to a minute. And because it was all in my back, I didn't feel a thing in my tummy. I thought maybe it was just the baby moving, putting a bit of pressure on my back. Maybe it was just that. So didn't think anything of it. I was like, maybe it was a contraction, maybe it wasn't. I was like, I feel fine now, we'll just see. Anyway, literally 5 minutes later, I had another one, and it was very, very intense. Like, when I tell you this pain was like nothing I've ever felt before. And I was a bit like, oh, if these are contractions, why are they so intense so quick? Like, yeah, contractions aren't meant to be nice at all, but I thought, if it's this intense this quick, how the hell am I going to cope as they get progressively worse? So I was a bit like, oh my gosh, is this happening? Is it not? Why is it so painful at this point? Because usually you hear people say, oh yeah, like, I started with contractions, they were really mild at first and then they built up to be really intense, but mine were really painful and really intense straight away. And the fact that I got one 5 minutes later, I was like, these are coming quite quick. Anyway, I kept contracting. It was all in my back, so I had back labour, and the pain was honestly excruciating. I couldn't really lie down. My boyfriend was trying to get me to lie down so I could be in a comfortable position, but lying down made the feeling worse. I had to be like either sat upright or fully stood up. So at this point, I had my labour comb and I was just trying to breathe through it, but they were getting progressively worse, and they were instantly like 5 minutes apart, and then they just got progressively closer really, really, really quick. I had an app on my phone where I could track how often they were coming, how long they were lasting, and things like that. So the average was like that they were coming every 4 minutes, and I had only been contracting for half an hour. So at this point, I rang triage and I said, I've started contracting. I've only been contracting for half an hour, but they are really intense and they're coming very, very quickly. What do I need to come in? Do I need to stay home? What do I do? And she asked how far apart they were and asked how long they were lasting. So I said, come in every 4 minutes, lasting a minute. And she said to stay at home, take paracetamol, wait 40 minutes and call back after that. So I was thinking, the pain I am in, paracetamol is not going to touch the sides at this point. Like, I was in so much pain. So I thought, fine, I'll do as she says. So I took the painkillers, waited 40 minutes, and in that 40 minutes, it just got more intense, and I was like, this baby is coming now. So after the 40 minutes, I rang triage back again, and I said, at this point, I was crying because I was in so much pain, and I was just like, I need to get to the hospital, like, this is coming way too quick. So by this point, it was about, I want to say 10:30, so I'd been contracting for an hour and a half at this point. So rang triage back, and I was like, I could barely speak. I was like, I'm in so much pain. I was like, I'm really struggling. And they were like, okay, it's fine, come in, we're expecting you, bring yourself in as quick as you can. So at this point, the only way that I could relieve a bit of pressure and a bit of pain from like my back and down there was to be sat on the toilet. I didn't actually need to go to the toilet, but that's just the place where I sat, where I felt the most comfortable, or as comfortable as can be. So my boyfriend was like, can you get up? And I was like, no, I can't. I was like, I physically can't get up. Like, I can't go and lie down, I can't stand up, I need to just sit here and relieve that pressure. So my boyfriend was like, you stay there, I'll go and get all the hospital bags, load the car up, and then once that's done, I'll come and grab you and put you in the car last, so that I'm not just sat there in the car really uncomfortable whilst he's trying to get all the bags. So I was sat on the toilet, he was running around downstairs trying to load the car up, and I started pushing. Now, I wasn't actively trying to push myself. My body was just naturally pushing with each contraction. So I started to panic then, because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not even trying to push. My body is doing it for me, which means she must be ready to come out. So I went into full on panic mode. I thought, I cannot have this baby sat on the toilet. And the way that my body was pushing, there was so much pressure down there that I genuinely thought a head was coming out. So I started to panic. So I was screaming down to my boyfriend. I was like, I think she's coming, like I'm pushing, I can't stop pushing. So he panicked. Well, he didn't panic, to be fair. My boyfriend is very calm, but he was kind of just like, what? Like really confused, like how the hell are you pushing already? So he ran upstairs and he was like, right, what do you want to do? Do you want to ring them back? And I was like, he was like, I need to get you to the car. And I was like, I cannot get in the car. I was like, I feel like she's coming and she's coming now. I cannot give birth to her in the car. So he was like, right, let's just get you to the bed. I was like, you need to look down there because I feel like a head's there, she's coming out. And he was like, babe, I don't think she is, but let's get you on the bed, I'll have a look. So I stood up off the toilet and there was so much blood. So my boyfriend was like, is it normal for that amount of blood to be coming out of you at this stage? And I was like, I don't think so. So it was just because everything was happening so quick, I was just very panicked. I didn't expect to obviously be pushing at home on the toilet, and I didn't expect that amount of blood to be coming out of me. So I was very scared at this point. I was crying and I was just like, I cannot have this baby at home. I was like, I have not prepared for a home birth. I was like, I need to be at the hospital because if she comes now, I'm not going to know if she's okay. Like, if she comes here with no medical professionals, no midwives, no paramedics, how the hell am I going to know that she's okay? What if she doesn't cry? What if I'm not okay? What if she's not okay? None of us are going to know that until there's a paramedic there or a midwife. So I was just really panicking at this point. So my boyfriend managed to get me to the bed and I had my legs up and he was looking to make sure that she wasn't coming out, and he was like, babe, I literally can't see anything. He was like, I cannot see anything. And I was like, her head's there, it's coming out, I can't stop pushing. And he was like, I promise you now, her head is not there. So at this point he was like, I need to get you to the car. And I was like, no. I was like, I cannot get in that car. So we had to ring an ambulance. Luckily the ambulance came very, very quick. They literally arrived within 2 minutes. We were still on the phone to the operator as the ambulance arrived, which was really good. We weren't waiting long at all. So 2 paramedics came upstairs and they helped me to the ambulance. Now I was really embarrassed because I don't know why I was embarrassed. I'm literally in labour, so usually you would think that like embarrassment wouldn't even be a thing, but I was just like on the bed, no pants on, pajama top on, absolutely bawling my eyes out. So I was like, oh gosh, what a sight for these poor paramedics. So they were like, let's quickly get you some clothes on. So the first thing I grabbed was my dressing gown, and the first shoes that I could grab were my boyfriend's sliders. So I'm walking to the ambulance, hunched over, contracting and pushing at the same time, with a dressing gown on and size 10 sliders. It was not a pretty sight, and obviously the ambulance arrived with sirens on, so I just know that there were neighbours looking out of the window to see what was going on, and just seeing me walking to this ambulance. Looking back now, I think, oh my gosh, that must have been hilarious to see. So they put me in the ambulance and they asked if I wanted my boyfriend to come in the ambulance with me to the hospital, or if he wanted to drive separately. Now at this point I was like, this baby is coming now. If you come in the ambulance with me, we're not going to have any of our bags, we're not going to have anything for baby, anything for me. So I said, I'll go on my own in the ambulance. I said, the car was already loaded up with the bags at this point, so I was like, you just get in your car and meet us there. So they had to blue light me to the hospital. Whilst I was in the ambulance, I was still pushing, I was still losing blood, and I was on the gas and air. So we got to the hospital in 10 minutes. It's not very far from where we live, luckily. So when I arrived, they took me to the midwives and they obviously handed me over, and the midwives said, we'll do an examination, see how far dilated you are and see what the situation is. So at this point my boyfriend hadn't arrived and there was no signal in the hospital. So I was trying to ring him, he was trying to ring me, but neither of the calls were going through. So the midwife checked how many centimeters I was, and she's doing a thing and she's like, you're 9.5 centimeters, we're going to delivery now. And I said, no. I said, I'm not going anywhere. I was very polite. I was like, I'm not going anywhere until my boyfriend gets here. Like, the house isn't far from the hospital. He shouldn't be long, but I cannot have this baby without him. She was like, don't worry, we'll go see where he is. So she went to look for him, and luckily he'd arrived, but he got to one reception and there was no one on the reception. So he was kind of running around the hospital trying to find someone to be like, where is my girlfriend? Luckily he managed to find us in time, and he rushed in, and I was like, I am 9.5 centimeters. The day before I was 1. I literally thought it would be days before I got to that point, but I arrived to the hospital at 9.5 centimeters dilated, which I am so thankful for, because obviously, especially for first babies, you can be in labour for absolute like hours, if not days. So I am just so glad that I was only in labour for a short amount of time, because that's what I was panicking about whilst I was pregnant. Like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in labour for like 36 hours or whatever it may be. So we went straight to the delivery room, and I had my baby girl. Now in the delivery room, baby girl has woken up from her nap. In the delivery room, I was on my back, and in my birth preferences, I didn't have a birth plan because nothing goes to plan. My birth is point proven. I wasn't expecting to be pushing at home. I wasn't expecting to lose that much blood. I wasn't expecting to go in an ambulance and be 9.5 centimeters dilated. I wasn't expecting it to go that way. So that's why I didn't have a plan, because it doesn't always go to plan. I just had some birth preferences. So one of my preferences was to give birth either on my side or on all fours. I really didn't want to be on my back, because that makes your chances of tearing a lot higher, and I was really worried about tearing. I wanted everything to be intact as much as possible, but because of how quick it was and the amount of pain I was in, naturally I was just on my back. Obviously when they're wheeling you through the hospital, I'm not going to be on all fours. You're naturally just on your back when you're being wheeled through the hospital. So when I got into delivery, the contractions were coming that quick and they were that intense that I'd not really had chance to change positions. So at this point I'm still on gas and air, and my waters haven't broken or anything like that, and I am on my back and I am not really pushing. My body's kind of doing the thing that it was doing at home, where it was naturally pushing when I was getting a contraction, but the midwives hadn't yet told me to really give it my all with pushing. So I'm on the gas and air, and they're obviously monitoring, seeing what's going on. And then at that point I felt my waters break naturally, so they didn't have to be broken. And that kind of, there was no pain or anything, it just feels like something bursting, and I just kind of felt the liquid come out. So at that point I'm still obviously in a lot of pain. The gas and air is taking the edge off. It was making me really woozy and feel a little bit drunk, but it wasn't doing that much, just taking the edge off. So my boyfriend asked, do you want an epidural? Because in part of my birth preferences, it was to get as far as I can without an epidural, but if I feel like I really need it, then I would have it. And I asked for the midwives to let me know if it gets to the point where it's like, if you don't have it now, you won't be able to have it. So at this point I was like, I think I need an epidural. I obviously wasn't sure how long it was going to be. If at that point I knew how quick she was going to be born, then I wouldn't have even asked for the epidural. I would have been like, no, I can do it. But at this point I didn't know how much longer I had left, so I was like, yeah, I need the epidural. So my boyfriend said, can she get an epidural now? And they said, I'm really sorry, it's too late, like this baby's coming too quick. Had you have come to the hospital not 9.5 centimeters and not actively pushing, then yeah, you could have had it, but it's way too late now. So they did offer some other forms of pain relief. So I can't remember specifically the name of the one that they said I could have, but I said that I wanted it, and it was basically one where they give it you through a cannula, and it's short bursts and it leaves your system really quick, so it doesn't affect the baby or anything like that. There is obviously, I think it's called pethidine, something along them lines. I don't know if I've got that right, but it does begin with a P, and that is meant to be a really good pain relief, but it can affect baby and it can make mum and baby really sleepy, so I really didn't want that. Which is why I opted for this one. I'm so sorry that I don't know what it was called. That, like I say, is just short bursts and it leaves your system really quick. So they said that they would get someone to come in and give me that, but baby girl was born before they even got there, so I did it with just gas and hair. So another midwife came in at this point and said, right, you really need to get on your side. She said, I really don't want you to tear, and you are likely to tear if you're on your back, so let's try and get you on your side. And she said that'll hopefully relieve a bit of pressure as well. So they managed to get me onto my side, and I was pushing. They were telling me to push, they were guiding me through the pushes, telling me when to stop, when to breathe, things like that. And they were like, it is progressing but very slowly, not much is happening when you're pushing. So the new midwife that had come in asked when I last went to the toilet for a wee, and I was out of it at this point, so my boyfriend was answering these questions, and she basically said that not much might be happening because I've got a full bladder. So they said, we need to get you back onto your back, give you a catheter, and try and drain your bladder, and hopefully when you're pushing it'll start progressing a lot quicker. So they moved me onto my back, and I was like, I really need to push. So they were like, okay, push, 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 and she was born. So I don't even know at that point if the catheter was put in me. I really don't know, I was out of it. But as soon as I went onto my back, it's like that pressure again, it's almost as if that motion of going back onto my back just moved baby girl down, and she was out. So yeah, again, not really sure if the catheter was actually put in me, but she was born and she was happy, she was healthy, she was crying straight away, and she was passed to me straight away, which I was so thankful for. I know obviously a lot of women go in their birth, there might be some issues with heart rate or oxygen levels or anything like that, so they can't obviously have baby straight away, which is really sad. But luckily for me, I was able to hold her straight away, and she was absolutely fine. We had a big cuddle whilst obviously they were checking everything down there. I obviously then had to give birth to the placenta. Now I couldn't do this naturally, I had to have the injection, and that's because of the amount of blood that I'd lost. They were a little bit concerned, so they were like, right, okay, we need to kind of get this placenta out. Didn't really feel much when I was giving birth to the placenta. I know they say you still kind of contract until it's out, but I didn't really feel anything at that point. I don't know if that's just because of the adrenaline, like I've just gone through all of that, and I've got my baby girl on me now, so maybe my head just wasn't in that space to be thinking about the contractions. But the birth of the placenta itself was absolutely fine, no issues, didn't really feel much. It felt a little bit weird, like tugging as they're pulling the umbilical cord, but yeah, absolutely fine in that regard. Dad got to cut the cord, which was great. We obviously did delayed cord clamping, which I think is natural practice anyway. I think they just recommend doing that anyway. I don't think you naturally have to ask for it. And then whilst I'm cuddling baby girl, they are obviously checking down there, and unfortunately I did have a 3rd degree tear. Now obviously I said a little bit earlier in the story that I was really worried about tearing, and I really didn't want to tear. So the fact that I had a 3rd degree really did upset me, as it would anyone. I just thought, oh my gosh, like I'm going to be in bits, I'm going to be in agony, I'm going to have to go to theatre, what's the recovery going to be like? So all this is running through my head, and I'm just like, oh gosh. So I then had to be wheeled off to theatre. Baby girl was obviously with Dad. I did have the intention of breastfeeding, and I am breastfeeding, but she wouldn't latch at that point, and obviously I had to go into theatre, so she did have to have some formula, which I'm not bothered about. I am not anti-formula whatsoever. As long as they're fed and they're happy, that's all that matters. So I thought that was quite nice for my boyfriend, because it meant he got to give her her first feed. And a lot of the time when babies are born, like it's the mum and baby that's the priority. The dads are never really the priority, which I think is wrong. It should be all 3 of you. So the mums tend to do a lot of the firsts, so I thought it was really nice that he could have that skin to skin whilst I was in theatre and give her her first feed. I was wheeled off to theatre, and they said it would take about half an hour. I was in there for about 3 hours, and they probably just said that just so I wasn't panicking about being away from baby for too long. When I got into theatre, everyone was so lovely. I was really lucky in that regard, and they gave me a spinal, which is similar to an epidural, so it's a spinal injection in your lower back, and it completely numbs everything from the waist down. So they give me that. I had to wait 15 minutes for that to kick in, and then they do some little tests just to make sure that you can't feel anything down there before they start stitching you up. So I couldn't feel a thing, and then they went ahead with stitching me up, and the process itself was as fine as it could be. Obviously it was just long to be away from baby and my boyfriend. Like I say, I was gone for like 3 hours. Baby was born at 1:15, well 1:14 in the morning, and I started contracting at 9 p.m. at night, so I was in labour for 4 hours and 14 minutes, which is insane for, I think, any labour really, but especially for your first baby. Like, that is so quick. So that's why at the start of the video I said I was so lucky, in the sense that I wasn't in labour for hours and hours and hours or days. But obviously the traumatic part was how quick it was, the amount of blood that I lost, the getting the ambulance there without my boyfriend, and then obviously the 3rd-degree tear. Whilst I was getting stitched up, I, like I say, couldn't feel anything from the waist down, but my upper body, I could not stop shaking. I felt freezing, my teeth were chattering, my arms were like proper shaking, and that is just a natural side effect of the spinal injection. Once I was stitched up and everything, they then wheeled me to recovery, where they just do your obs for a little bit, just make sure that, I think it's your blood pressure, maybe your heart rate, and there's something else that they monitor. I can't quite remember. Like I say, it was all just a bit of a blur. So I was in there for about half an hour, and they actually let my boyfriend and baby girl come to me, so it was nice to have them in the recovery bit with me, because I thought I had to wait until I got to the ward. And yeah, that is pretty much everything that happened. So it was very quick. I had a 3rd-degree tear, but she was healthy, I was healthy, apart from the tear. So yeah, even though it was slightly traumatic, it could have gone a lot worse. I know there's people out there that go through such traumatic births, so I'm not trying to take away from that and be like, mine was really bad, because in the grand scheme of things it wasn't. But obviously a 3rd-degree tear is quite heavy. But I'm recovering well. I then got to the ward at about 5:15 in the morning. At this point I had no bags whatsoever, so when my boyfriend got to the hospital, obviously I was in with the midwives being examined and was told I was 9.5 centimeters. My boyfriend hadn't yet got to us yet, so when he parked up, the car park is about a 10-minute walk from the entrance of the hospital, so he had to leave all of the bags, because he had a bag, I had a suitcase, the baby bag, and then an extra baby bag. So there's no way he could bring all of that in, especially when he had to be so quick. He basically had to run from the car park. So we had no baby bags at first when she was born, which meant we had no nappies, no clothes for her. So when she was first born, she didn't have a nappy on for ages. She did her first poo on my hand. Thanks for that, baby girl. And that's because the hospital went looking for nappies, but they only had premature nappies, and this baby girl was £8.9, so there is no way that she would be fitting in premature nappies. And they had to go find her a baby grow, and the only one they could find was a really ugly baby grow. I think it was for a boy, but like the patterns and the colours were just not very cute. So she had this really ugly baby grow on, and then a really cute pink woolly hat, and she just looked so funny in her pictures when she was first born, like in this really ugly baby grow but this really cute hat. So when I got to the ward, my boyfriend then went to get all the bags, brought all the bags, and then he then had to go home because it was outside of visiting hours. I had my famous tea and toast after giving birth, and it did hit the spot, but not as much as people made out. Like, everyone made out like this tea and toast would be the best thing ever. It was all right. I think I could have made a better cup of tea and toast at home, to be honest. But, you know, at that point, you're exhausted, you're starving, you're so just drained from everything that you've just been through, that it did satisfy me, but it wasn't as good as everyone made out. I did have to stay in a hospital for technically 3 nights, because I went in at, I got to the hospital at 11, so, and then she was born early hours of the morning. So that's technically 1 night, but then I had to stay in 2 extra nights. That's because when they did her observations, when I was in theatre, they said that her glucose levels were really low, so they needed to keep us in to monitor that. And then they obviously wanted to keep an eye on me because I lost a lot of blood and I obviously had a 3rd-degree tear, so they just wanted to keep us in to keep an eye on us both. Luckily, her glucose levels went up straight away. The next time that they did the heel prick to test the glucose levels, they were back up, and then the second time that they did them, they were back up again, which is really good. We had to stay in for 2 nights because realistically we should have gone home on the Monday. We were told we could go home on the Monday once baby girl had her top to toe checks done, but they just never got around to doing them on the Monday, which was really frustrating for me. I know obviously there are people in the hospital that are more of a priority if there's any issues or any health concerns for mum or baby, so I completely understand that, but I was just so exhausted. I was so hormonal, so emotional. The fact that my boyfriend couldn't stay over with me was really hard. I was really struggling with breastfeeding. She wasn't latching, she wasn't feeding very well, so I really did just want to get home. So it was quite frustrating that we were told that we could go home on the Monday after her top to toe checks, and then it got to like 7 p.m. and no one had come to see us yet. So I asked, are we going home today? And it was at 7 p.m. that they said, oh no, sorry, you have to go home tomorrow now. So that was a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is. She got them done the next day and we were able to go home on the Tuesday. So yeah, that is pretty much everything for my birth story. I feel like it was such a whirlwind. Obviously, like I say, everything happened so quick, so I might have missed key little bits out, but I think I've covered the majority and the main part of the birth story. So thank you so much for watching. I hope it's not put you off. Like I say, even though it was a little bit traumatic for me, I would do it 10 times over, and it is so worth it for my baby girl, and it's definitely not put me off having more kids in the future, which is good. But yeah, that is everything. If you have any questions, or if you're pregnant, due to give birth to, and you have any questions or concerns, drop a comment. I'm obviously not a healthcare professional, but I can talk from my experience. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.